What is the requirement? Respond to the board of X request for work on the following areas. Measuring divisional manager performance. There are 8 marks available for the first piece of work on this area, and then there are 5 marks available for the second piece of work on this area. Then the proposed reward scheme. Professional marks will be awarded for demonstration of analysis and evaluation, skepticism and commercial acumen. ठीक है. Look at exhibit. There is one exhibit also later, but first look at this part. Egg is a privately owned capital intensive manufacturing business. It has several similarly sized divisions which operate as profit centers. These divisions operate in different regions of Egg's home country, where the average tax rate is 40% and where the average rate of interest for commercial lending is 6%. Egg is financed by equal amounts of equity and debt. Egg's overall objective is to maximize shareholder wealth. The company's board of directors, who are also the shareholders, make all investment and financing decisions. The board is considering expanding X product range, which will require the company to purchase a large amount of new plant and machinery. The shareholders are unable to provide any more capital and are unwilling to issue any form of equity finance. Eck is already close to breaching borrowing conditions and limits set by lenders and is unable to raise any more debt finance. Why does it suddenly feel like a AAA question? It is very close to breaching the conditions relating to finance and all of that. Eck has recently reviewed the estimated useful economic life of existing large items of manufacturing plant, which is permitted under local accounting regulations. ठीक है. Now, the board has recently been told that if the plans to expand its product range are to be successful, EC needs better systems for measuring the performance of divisional managers and rewarding them. None of the divisional managers have any financial qualifications or experience. The board is therefore considering two possible measures of divisional manager performance, EBITDA and EVA, and would like you as a performance management expert to undertake two pieces of work. The board is unfamiliar with EBITDA and want an assessment of its usefulness to measure a divisional manager's performance. The board does not require any calculations of EBITDA. The board has already been advised on the benefits and drawbacks of using EVA as a suitable performance measure, but has not yet seen how EVA is calculated for a particular division. As an example of this, the board would like to know whether the blue division has created value using the information given in Appendix 1. Exhibit 3, Proposed Reward Scheme. Based on the review of two possible performance measures, the board has proposed a new reward scheme for divisional managers. Each manager will receive a reward equivalent to 45% of their annual salary if their division achieves a target EVA for the coming year. Divisional managers have participated in the setting of the scheme. Market conditions in which each division operates will be considered when setting the target EVA, which for Blue Division is 25 million. EC has effective internal procedures to ensure the reliability of performance data and to prevent managers from focusing too much on a particular target while ignoring important factors. ये honestly ना we should not have read this part. अभी हमने 2 मिनट वेस्ट कर दिया without realizing कि यार proposed reward scheme का requirement is different. For measuring divisional performance, they want two help. ये अभी बाद में देखो. Which is why you have to do considerate reading. You have to ensure कि एक requirement का जो भी exhibit है उस पे focus करो, get that sorted and then move to the next one. They have asked you, they want an assessment of the usefulness to measure a divisional manager's performance of EBITDA. They don't need calculations of EBITDA. In short, they want you to describe why is EBITDA a good measure for evaluating the performance of a manager. ठीक है. As a performance measure, why is EBITDA good? So we have to talk about, अच्छा, first of all, you will have to explain what is EBITDA. Can you tell me the full form of EBITDA?
Earnings before interest,
Earning
tax,
before the interest,
depreciation, and
tax, depreciation,
amortization.
amortization.
Okay. So if I have profit after tax, ठीक है, उसमें बिफोर टैक्स मतलब एड बैक कर दिया टैक्स को, एड बैक कर दिया इंटरेस्ट को, एड बैक कर दिया डेप्रिसिएशन, amortization को. Think of the cash flow statement that you studied in accounting. Don't you think वहां पे when we start, we start with PBT, we add interest, we add non-operating non-cash expenses, कुछ plus minus करके we start moving towards the cash flow figure. So basically when you are saying interest before earnings tax depreciation interest tax depreciation amortization, you are adding back all the non-cash expenses, you are adding back all the non-operating expenses. Aren't you moving very close to the cash flow number? है ना? So can I say, and this is how most of these startups function. When I was in PE and we used to have, all of these funding discussions with startups, they would all talk about EBITDA. Now, EBITDA, in my opinion, is a very feeble number. It's not a measure of accounting or performance that has been mandated by the accounting standard. Accounting standards or your IFRS will not talk about EBITDA. But EBITDA, for lack of a better word, instead of constructing a full-fledged cash flow statement every time and going through so many adjustments, they think it's better that you use EBITDA, which is very easy to calculate because in the PAT figure, you add tax, interest, depreciation, amortization, and you go very close to the cash flow number. Okay. So EBITDA basically stands as a, I could say, a proxy or a substitute for cash flow. And it basically gives you an idea that how much cash, not, see, this is not an accurate measure of cash, but it gives you a good enough this thing about cash generation ability of the company. Now, why do you think it is relevant for Eck company? You see here, the board's CX overall objective is to maximize shareholder wealth. No surprises for saying that. The company's board of directors, who are also the shareholders, make all investment and financing decisions. ठीक है. Now, Eck is considering expanding Eck's product range, which will require the company to purchase a large amount of new plant and machinery. The shareholders are unable to provide any more capital and are unwilling to issue any form of equity finance. Eck is already close to breaching borrowing conditions and limits set by its lenders and is unable to raise any more debt finance. Do you agree that the company A is going to require cash and at present does not really have a lot of cash? This is the current position of the company. It needs cash. It doesn't have enough cash. So, if a manager is able to generate high EBITDA or decent EBITDA, that would be an indication of the cash generating ability of his particular division. And in such a situation of cash crunch and debt conditions and all of that, all ready to get broken at any point in time, don't you think this will serve as a measure to see here if his division is generating cash, then that means he's doing a good job. Okay. If his division is generating cash, that means he's doing a good job, and EBITDA could be considered as a relevant performance measure for him. Right. Up EBITDA does not ignore capital expenditure. Sorry, it ignores capital expenditure. And if you remember, when we used to prepare cash flow statement, वहाँ पे हम working capital changes plus minus करते हैं. Right. So that we are not doing here anyway. But still, it is as close to the cash flow figure as possible. So it could be considered as a performance measure specifically in these set of circumstances. Do you agree?
Yes.
What else or why else do you think EBITDA would be a good performance measure, in your opinion?
Actually, like as per me, they are already on the verge to breaching that borrowing condition. Like they have many fixed interest payment that would be paid every year. So if you are removing the interest amount from the like PAT, then we are not showing the true picture. Because of that, it can serve as a
Fair enough, fair enough. Uh, so एक तो है इसका that it stands as a proxy for cash flow. Then can we say on some level that this EBITDA is relatively easy to calculate? Can that, and there is a certain amount of objectivity. Why? Because see, you are only adding numbers which are very clearly present in your financial statements, right? And ये company के जो managers है, the divisional managers, we are not talking about the finance team. The divisional managers, very clearly it is mentioned that they lack financial training, है ना? So for them to understand, EBITDA would be a relatively easier measure because all its values are coming straight out from the financial statements, है ना? And certain subjective estimates can see there is a problem कि EBITDA के जो the numbers that you add back in EBITDA, which is depreciation and amortization, at the end of the day they are accounting estimates. Don't you agree? Because when you calculate depreciation, you consider use estimated economic life and sorry estimated useful life and estimated residual value. When you are doing amortization at that point also you consider the estimated life. So these calculations when you do they are still estimated numbers. तो उतना मतलब there is still a certain amount of subjectivity involved, but to a great extent because these values are coming straight up from your balance sheet P&L, basically from your financial statements, they will become a little more concrete for them. ठीक है. And another good part about EBITDA, see, it is earnings before interest. Okay, that means it is, if you really think about it, EBITDA is operating cash flow because it is telling you the cash flow or cash movement or generation before interest and tax costs are considered. See, what is interest? Interest is a financing cost, interest is not an operating cost. So, you are adding back the interest. You are also removing tax because see tax is unfortunately it's like a side effect of a medicine. The medicine does you good but then you have to suffer the side effect. You are getting your money, but as in you are getting your income, but you are paying tax along with it and there is nothing you can do about it. It is beyond your control. So all these non-controllable factors or non-operating factors are removed, and see, now the managers will be held accountable only for the performance of their division. So, in that sense, EBITDA becomes, you know, it becomes a performance measure which is based upon controllable factors. ठीक है. When I say controllable factors, what do I mean? I am removing all those. See, interest, that is the loan that is taken, is negotiated by the head office for the company as a whole. I have to bear the interest cost, but I did not negotiate the interest cost. So for me, if you are considering net profit as the performance indicator, then what you are effectively doing is you are effectively getting rid of, you know, you are also incorporating points which I did not help to negotiate, which were basically non-controllable, and you are holding me accountable for that. So naturally, that might impact the motivation of the divisional performance managers. So that way, EBITDA is a good performance measure. It increases the motivation of managers because it basically looks at the controllable aspects of their performance. ठीक है. And EBITDA also ignores the value of capital employed. It also that is one of the limitations. It does not take into account changes in working capital and all of that. But ठीक है, it is still relatively closer to actual cash flows as compared to the other methods that we have looked at. ठीक है. So I would now want you to read the EBITDA वाला part. ठीक है. Go through it carefully, step by step.
So can you please scroll?
Sure.
So please scroll.
Sure. ठीक है. This was the first part of the question as to why is EBITDA a good indicator of or a good way to measure performance. They wanted an assessment of its usefulness. The board has been advised on the benefits and drawbacks of using EVA as a suitable performance measure, but has not yet seen how EVA is calculated for a particular division. As an example of this, the board would like to know whether the blue division has created value using the information given in Appendix 1. Net operating profit, opening net assets, cost of equity, cost of debt, net profit after tax for the year is after charging interest of 20 million. Development expenditure of 5 million was incurred during the year. The development expenditure is amortized over 4 years. Now, the big question here is that how exactly is EVA calculated? Do you know how to calculate economic value added? Is there a formula or अपने मन से कुछ भी कर सकते हैं? Akshara, how do we calculate economic value added? Is there a formula to it? Yes, of course, there is a formula to it. Let's see how that is done. First of all, the first calculation that you need to do is NOPAT. What is NOPAT, Yukta?
Net operating profit after tax.
Mm-hmm.
So in that, the operating profit will we have to add back or less all the non-operating cash expenses or incomes and
Let's
reduce
with
tax from it.
okay. Let's start with controllable net profit, है ना? That should be our starting point. कितना है controllable net operating profit after tax? 50 है ना? उसमें आप क्या ऐड करेंगे?
Interest,
Interest, add back, interest, but this has to be net of tax, correct?
yes,
Interest कितना है? Interest is 20, tax rate is 40. So 20 into 1 minus 40%. ठीक है? कितना है? 12. Okay. This is enough, or we need to add, or we need to adjust something else also.
the amortization of the development.
So here development expenditure was incurred during the year. It is to be amortized over 5 years. So इसका क्या करेंगे? Should we add back 5? Should we add back 1? Should we subtract 1? What should we do?
Add back one.
And this number, this 50, is it after subtracting 5?
Yes.
Yes. So first of all, don't you think you will have to add back amortization? Sorry, not amortization. I should say I have to add back development expenditure. कितना? 5 less amortization of development expenditure 1. ऐसे ही होगा ना. So we'll get net operating profit after tax. How much? 50 plus 12 plus 5 minus 1. 66. Makes sense? So this is net operating profit after tax. Now you also need to parallelly, you have to adjust the assets also, है ना? So let's see what information do we have on assets. Operating net assets are 496 million. उसके आगे what should we do about it? We need the economic value of assets. Do we have any other information, any other adjustments that can help us with this? है कुछ
No,
युक्ता?
sir, because we consider the opening net assets at the beginning of the year, and
Right.
the development expenditure is incurred during the year.
Correct. So here, so the numerator and the denominator basically have to be comparable, if I'm not mistaken. है ना? So when it comes to assets, opening net assets also economic value कितना है? 496. ठीक है. अब अब क्या करेंगे? is so we have to see, we have no part, we have opening net assets. We have to multiply the opening net assets with the cost of capital of the company, है ना? वो WACC के साथ we'll multiply, then we'll get the, it's then we'll get the basic. So we are multiplying the total assets with the weighted average cost of capital. So that is the bare minimum expected return when these particular assets are deployed in the business. Any return you generate over and above that will be considered your economic value added. Now tell me, uh, I have equity whose cost is 15%. I have debt whose cost is 12% pre-tax. पोस्ट टैक्स पे तो मैं कन्वर्ट कर दूंगा इसको, कोई इशू नहीं है. नाउ टेल मी, what is the proportion of debt and equity in this company? Have they given that anywhere?
Equal.
Yes, sir, is financed by equal amounts of
Equal
equity and
amounts
debt.
of equity and debt. So I will need, यहाँ पे लगे तो like we can do that. We can do calculation of weighted average cost of capital. Source, cost, proportion, WACC. Equity, debt. Cost of equity कितना है? 15%, right? Cost of debt कितना है? 12% into 1 minus, मैंने 30% लिखा है, कितना है? बट कॉस्ट ऑफ, सॉरी, टैक्स रेट इज 40, नॉट 30. ठीक है, ये है मेरा कॉस्ट. व्हाट इज द प्रोपोर्शन? You are in line for now the WACC calculation. 11.1%. ठीक है. Now opening net assets into WACC 11.1%. 55.06. ठीक है. Now what else do we have? अच्छा, we had already calculated net operating profit after tax as 66. Opening net assets into WACC is 55.06. We could call this the capital charge, जो भी उसको बुलाना है. ठीक है. And how do we get EVA? Economic value added. Economic value added is 66.0 minus 55.06. 10.94 is the amount of economic value added. Make sense?
Yes.
This is, I think, the easier part of the question. But if you have observed, if you have gone through the kit, there are quite a few questions on economic value added. है ना। काफी सारे क्वेश्चंस है ईवीए पे। तो सी, बट दिस इज वन ऑफ द इजियर वंस। कभी कभी देयर कैन बी सम लेवल ऑफ कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी। इट्स क्वाइट सिमिलर टू जो हम एक रेसिड्यूअल इनकम करके वी यूज टू डू अ कैलकुलेशन इन पीएम। रेसिड्यूअल इनकम वाज whatever is the capital employed of the company, multiply that with the cost of capital. That is the bare minimum return that a company should earn given the level of its net assets. Usko compare that with the actual returns generated by the company. That was residual income there. Something similar is economic value added, although थोड़ा सा उसमें adjustment आपको करना पड़ेगा। ठीक है। And that was about the first part, which was worth 13 marks. Now, the proposed reward scheme. ठीक है। Based on the review of two possible performance measures, the board has proposed a new reward scheme for divisional managers. Each manager will receive a reward equivalent to 45% of their annual salary if their division achieves the target EVA for the coming year. Divisional managers have participated in the setting of the scheme. Market conditions in which each division operates will be considered when setting the target EVA, which for Blue Division is 25 million. Eck has effective internal procedures to ensure the reliability of performance data and to prevent managers from focusing too much on a particular target while ignoring other important factors. The board would like advice on whether this proposed new reward scheme will help improve the performance of the Blue Division. Now tell me whether this proposed reward scheme will help to improve the performance of Blue Division. Basically, आपको क्या करना है? You have to look at whether this reward scheme is fulfilling the basic characteristics of a good reward scheme. So, check whether it is clearly defined, check whether it is enough to motivate the managers, and check whether it is basically based on those factors which are controllable for the manager. So, I mean, if you include factors which are not controllable for the manager, then do you think it is enough or it will be enough to motivate the managers further? तो उस एंगल से आपको इवैल्यूएट करना है। ठीक है। टेक 2 to 3 minutes. आई एम सिटिंग हियर ओनली। थिंक एंड टेल मी वेदर each one of you can pick up one point. Yukta, you can tell me if the scheme is clearly defined or not, or there are ambiguities in terms of reward calculation. Vatsal, you can tell me if the scheme is good enough to motivate the employees. And Urvaksh, you can tell me if it is based on controllable factors. Okay? Yukta, let's start with you.
So the scheme is clear because they have clearly mentioned that the rewards will be 45% of the annual salary.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, the divisional managers are not financially qualified. So there might be difficulty in measuring the performances because the performance measurement is been done by using EVA.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So, see, the managers are not financially qualified. They may not understand the adjustments. But the figure of whatever EVA figure has been quoted, it's a clear figure, right? And the EVA calculation basically involves making adjustments to accounting profit. Now, it may be unclear which expenditure is value building for the future, and there might be some confusion about which costs have to be added back. And as you mentioned, given the fact that these managers are not financially qualified, they may not necessarily understand the significance of these adjustments. They might end up not understanding why a particular item is getting added and why certain adjustments are happening. So from that angle also, they might not feel that it is, they will not understand only what is happening if you are using EVA as a performance measure, because EVA professionals like us also will take some time to understand. अब ये तो बेचारे managers, they are people who don't even understand finance as much. So for them, it is going to be a challenge. Now, Vatsal, you tell me if it is going to be motivational enough. Will the team members find enough motivation here? What is your understanding?
Actually, like as per me, the motivation would be enough because uh, the outcome and they're getting like 45% of their salary. But the issue is regarding that the factor to calculate the EVA not any controllable for the managers. like we have to take into consideration the cost of equity and debt. And as per mentioned in the question earlier, that company is already in verge of the breaking, like borrowing common debt. So there might be chances that the company raise any finance or anything else, they raise on a more like cost of equity. Oh, sorry, cost of debt. So interest rate would be higher, and
Okay.
it is not like basically controlled by the managers. Actually, like the head of finance going to negotiate and like give the deal to the managers. So because of that, like they have good motivation, but it's not they weren't able to control, and they weren't able to perform as much how they can.
Fair. I see that as a fair point. Now, the reason why the motivational factor is so important, see, reward, people should feel, first of all, that, yeah, after doing this, we will be able to, मतलब ये first of all it should be an achievable target. If I tell you कि यार I'll give you a prize if you receive 100 on 100 in APM, you're like यार ये तो होने ही नहीं वाला है, तो why even work towards it? So you will not be motivated to work enough. If the reward is too low, if I say, get an 80 plus for me in APM, I'll give you a price of 500 rupees. You're like रखो यार 500, I don't want the 500 का price. Working so much trying to secure an 80 in APM is not going to help me. So you might as well be like चलो भूल जाओ यार क्या फर्क पड़ता है. So your approach to it might be different, and you might not feel motivated enough to do it. See, missing target by a small amount often demotivates the managers. If the target is unattainable, people will not even start, they will give up. Once the target is met, what is the next motive for performance, right? The proposed target of 25 million right now is way higher than the current EVA. It might be unrealistic. मतलब going from 11 का EVA to 25 का EVA is a very long journey that you will have to take. And bonus value is also very high, so that could be a strong motivation. It may push managers towards excessive risk taking, and it could, it might not be aligned with the risk appetite of the company. But so there are two aspects to the motivational part. A, the jump from 11 point, sorry, 10.9 or whatever to 25, it's a very big jump. So that jump might seem unrealistic, but the reward is pretty high. So, 45% of their salary they will get as bonus. So that might serve as a good enough motivation for the company to push and try their luck further. Not for the company, for the managers to push and try to go and achieve that number. तो दोनों है उसके aspects. One, the target is very high, but the bonus associated with that is also pretty high. ठीक है. So think about both the factors when answering this part. And Urvaksh, you tell me, uh, are these, so the calculations for EVA, whatever calculations we are making, are these factors controllable by the managers?
So to us, I feel to a certain extent, these are not controllable because first, the tax rate, which is first used in the calculation for cost of debt, is not in their control. And second, the senior management or the directors, they are undertaking any decisions related to new equity financing or debt, and which can potentially change the cost of capital. So this will influence the EVA calculation.
So are we say, we are again thoda sa stuck somewhere in between?
Right, because
A part
if
of it is yes.
interest rates increase or the tax will reduce, or the uh, equity shareholders demand more returns, this calculation will change.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Chalo. So now let's have a look at the answer. The clarity part of it, the motivational part of the reward scheme, and then the controllability. ठीक है. एक बार देख लो.
So in motivational aspect, like, can we say that the managers should be potentially rewarded in proportion to the target which they have achieved? If they have achieved 50% of the target, maybe they get the 50% of the incentives.
That can come as a recommendation if a recommendation is asked. For
Okay.
sure. Yeah. Scroll. See, now what I have given you is I have given you all the pointers. You can make full sentences out of it, right? So, Urvaksh, the point that you mentioned is quite fair and reasonable. There are certain aspects of NOPAT which are under your control, and however, there are some relevant costs which are not controllable, and judging someone's performance on the basis of those aspects which are not controllable is kind of unfair. So, in complete agreement with what you said. देख लिया? Cool.
Yes.
Chalo. Now, there is, so this was on EVA and EBITDA and the rewarding aspects. There's one more question that I want to do with you. Let me tell you which